Welcome back to the Midnight Mirage School of Higher Learning. Just want to thank the ladies and gentlemen for tuning in. So we will further our investigation into history. And in this tape, we will go over real so-called Black American history. Real so-called Black American history. We are familiar with so-called February, that month being quote-unquote Black History Month. And we hear a lot of speeches from Martin Luther King. They play documentaries from Ida B. Wells, etc. But is this true so-called Black history? All right. So we're going to answer some of those questions. What is real so-called Black history? Another thing we're going to investigate is some of the terminology and code words that are used in history books, literature, archaeological texts, any kind of reference where it talks about history. You're going to find a lot of code words, a lot of, what may even be seen as jargon, but it's a lot of heavy terms. And a lot of these are really disguise words to hide you from where the true history is. And they're also freemasonic terms. And when I say freemasonic terms, I mean terminology that was created by men who are Freemasons, part of secret organizations. And some of these men have influence in, education curriculums and what is taught in the academic sphere. And this goes back to the 1800s, in particular, the Reconstruction era, on into the early 1900s. So most of what we know of as archaeology, genetic science, etc., in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there were a lot of, Caucasian bigots that were creating these, really which today are looked at as educational standards and historical narratives. All right. Now, the reason why a lot of this was done, is, of course, it had financial reasons. So the people could prosper and make money off of the products, the services, and everything that came with it. But ultimately, from a corporate government level in perspective, it was done to keep a stronghold on the land, the allodial land titles, and more importantly, to keep the people who actually the land belongs to in a form of a mirage and keep them confused as to what the truth is. Because if they knew what the truth is, that they may start asking questions and they may start demanding things be a certain way. All right. So this would be a pretty good tape, but I want you to take some notes because it's going to be a lot of terms I'm going to use. And, you've heard these terms before, but we just want to put them in the right context. And before we move forward, I want you to understand that a lot of the literature and the books that we read, whether they be secular, religious, etc., a lot of these people are agents of these Freemasonic lodges, and they're putting out a lot of misinformation, disinformation, lies, etc. Also, the way the CIA works, the Central Intelligence Agency, a lot of their propaganda and marketing, in particular through Hollywood, so when we see these so-called slave narrative movies like Amistad, Roots, etc., and how that reinforces what we're told in school about the quote-unquote African slave trade narrative, how you have that relationship between the academic and educational curriculum with the Hollywood propaganda and entertainment sphere, how they are reinforcing each other with that same narrative. That's because they are part of the same team. So you have to understand that so-called Black Americans actually are the original American. And we know that, and I talk about this in my book, not only how they have flipped a lot of these Freemasonic terms, but also how human beings are described, or the way at least we identify ourselves by ethnicity and nationality. All right. Ethnicity and nationality is typically how the human being identifies themselves. And when I say ethnicity, usually the ethnicity is going to be used to describe phenotypes, maybe certain physical features, etc. But it's going to be in the position of the adjective. And think about how adjectives describe nouns. And the nationality will be in the position of the noun. So, of course, that's the geographic location, which continent the person may be from. And of course, the nation and the original bloodline that person may be from, because you could live on a particular continent, but that doesn't mean you descend from the genetic bloodlines, the ancient tribal bloodlines that were on that continent. So let's take, mainland North America, for example. We know right now the United States of America, that corporate government is basically, that federal government is ruling the land right now. But we know that it is a foreign government, meaning that majority of the people who are running it right now, they're not from America. They don't have ancestry that dates back to the ancient Americas. Their ancestry dates back to, the European arrival, the arrival of Europeans, the late 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s. But really, majority of the people today and the predominant of foreigners that are in mainland North America, really a lot of their ancestry came here more in the 1800s. So they didn't even come, in those early, batches and groups of slaves. And let me say this too. A lot of the pale Caucasian people, the people that we call white today, they were the original, groups of so-called slaves that were being sent to the 13 colonies that were being ruled by the melanated Shemitic Moorish or Black or Moorish, Scots, Welsh, Irishmen, Iberians, Franks, Celts, Germans, etc., that were ruling the 13 colonies. So understand that the 13 colonies was originally created by melanated European people. But when these people got these 13 colonies, and some of these colonies, they did land deals with the indigenous Mississippian people who were here. I'm going to go into that in a minute. But when the melanated Europeans came here, they did land deals with some of the people. Of course, it was a little warfare as well. But the 13 colonies were set up on the eastern seaboard. And when they set their, when they were starting to create their civilization here, they would import, a lot of the basically lower class of Europa. Some of it mixed in with melanated people who were on their lower self shit. But a lot of it were Caucasian pale Slavs that were part of the serf class of Europa that were being sent over. So it was a lot of the Caucasian females that were being sent over. It was a lot of the Caucasian criminals that were being sent over. And it was a lot of, like children being sent over. So some of these early groups of people that were being sent over, these actually were a pale group of people being sent over to work and live and, create a new life for themselves as well on the 13 colonies. All right. So understand that, so just put a bow on that and move forward. You got these freemasonic terms, and you want to understand really what's going on by doing deeper investigation. All right. So before we move forward, what we have on the screen right here in front of us, I'll zoom in real quick, is a picture of a group of indigenous American Atlantean Maya men. All right. As you can see here, these are a copper-colored so-called Negro Shemitic group of men right here. So the people in mainland North America, they descend from this same group of people right here. Now, originally, who are these people? The ancient Mississippians, the ancient Maya, the ancient Inca, the ancient Aztec. Who are their ancestors? Where did they come from? How did they learn about pyramid and mound building, sciences, masonry, religion? Where did they learn that from? Who taught them that? And ladies and gentlemen, the answer to that would be the people in civilization that we are told about as Atlantis, quote unquote. All right. So when you do research, you find documentaries and you read about this mystical civilization called ancient Atlantis. And they talk about all these high sciences and all this high technology that was going on during this time, that the people there were more advanced than the people of today, that they were, further ahead, as I said, in their technology, etc. And a lot of the times it's a lot of, mystic properties that are associated with Atlantis. They make you think, were these a reptilian people? Were these a group of Palladian, blue-eyed, Caucasian, blonde-haired, tall people? Like what kind of people were these Atlanteans? You have a lot of narratives put out, a lot of Freemasonic authors and writers putting out a lot of propaganda to throw off who the original people that were living in this civilization that they call Atlantis. Because in a minute, we're going to see that the civilization or the time period that they call Atlantis, biblically dates back to the times of Shem, Eber, and Peleg, when the lands were divided in the Bible, in the Old Testament. All right. So remember, when I use the term Shem, Eber, and Peleg, I'm using them as historical terms that were recorded in the Bible, because the Bible is actually a Shemitic history book. All right. And the ancient Atlanteans, ancient Mississippians, ancient Maya, these are a Shemitic people, or at least according to biblical terminology. Okay. So that's who you're looking at on the screen right here. So so-called Black Americans, those people descend from these ancient Shemitic, Mississippian, Maya, Olmec, Aztec, ancient Atlantean groups. All right. That's who they descend from. Okay. The next thing we want to focus on is, as I said before in the previous tape, we talked about how the descendants of Noah, Shem, and Ham were both melanated men, but they came from two different ethnic groups. And these two different groups created civilization, and actually one learned from the other. Now, contemporary literature, contemporary teachings tell us that ancient Egypt, ancient Africa, quote unquote, is the oldest civilization, and that they are the mothers and fathers of knowledge and teaching in the world. So, just think about that Egyptology craze that happened in the early 1900s when Great Britain and a lot of the Caucasian English, went into Cairo and excavated, and, that was their first time learning about ancient civilization. So because it was brand new to them in the early 1900s, everything that came after that in pop culture, the United States of America, etc., basically everything of the West. And when we say the West, we're talking about Europe and the Americas under European control. It will be highly influenced and thought that, yes, it may have been the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans that we learned from, but ultimately, the furthest back we're going to go is the ancient Egyptians. We give them all the credit to everything that we know. And this was really created from, as I said, that craze and that phenomenon in the early 1900s, when they went and, dug up a lot of the tombs in Egypt and so-called East Africa. All right. But the truth is that it actually is the ancient Shemitic groups of ancient Atlantis that taught some of these later day groups that would create civilizations and pyramid cultures in later day, what's known as East Africa. All right. So before we move forward, keep in mind that the ancient Mississippian mounds, the ancient pyramid complexes of, South America, Mexico, Central America, etc. There are thousands of mounds and pyramids across the Americas. Let me repeat that one more time. There are thousands of pyramids and mounds across the Americas, North, Central, and South America, across mainland North America alone. Just the southern states, the southeastern woodlands, like Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama, Georgia, the Carolinas. There are hundreds and hundreds of mounds and civilizations in these modern day states that date back older than the ancient Egyptian and Babylonian constructs and structures of those time periods. All right. So what I'm saying is that you have mounds that are in modern day Louisiana, modern day Alabama, that are older than the pyramids of so-called Africa, older than some of the, great creations of ancient Mesopotamia and ancient Sumeria. They are much older. So we have ancient mounds here in mainland North America, like I said, in the South, Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, that are older than the pyramids of so-called Africa. All right. So keep that in mind. The next thing we want to do is we're going to shift gears. We're going to shift gears now to the Bible, the Old Testament, a history book. And we want to look at Genesis 21 through 32. All right. Genesis 21 through 32, because we want to track the ethnicity or the ethnic lineage of the ancient Mississippian or the indigenous Americans, the Atlanteans, okay? And why I'm saying that the Atlanteans are the old creators of religion, etc. And actually, it was our people that started to travel east, and we started to teach the people in the east. Because remember, there are more pyramids and mounds in the Americas. So we taught those that were in those Shemitic people and some of the indigenous people of so-called Africa actually how to create pyramids. All right. So let's start at Genesis 21. It says, and unto Shem, the father of all the children of Eber, the elder brother of Japheth, to him also were children born. The sons of Shem, Elam and Asher, Arpachshad, and Lud and Aram. I want to get to the part that I want to get to. Here we go, right here. It says, and Arpachshad begot Shelah, and Shelah begot Eber. Now, Eber is a very, very important term because we about to track the lineage basically from Shem to Eber to the Atlanteans and the Mississippians. Okay, so remember, we about to track it from Shem to Eber to the Atlanteans / Mississippians. So notice that I didn't even get to Abraham yet. I didn't even get to Isaac yet. I didn't get to Jacob / Israel and the Israelites yet that came much later. I'm talking about their forefathers and their ancestors that they got the remnant culture from. We about to track it from Shem to Eber to Peleg / the Atlanteans / Mississippians. So what I'm saying is that this ancient Shemitic, so-called Hebrew or Eber group that are in the Americas are older than that later day Israelite group that came under, Moses, freeing them out of Egypt. Our group is actually older. We're the ancestral group that they even came from. So that's why I'm using the term Shemitic and Eber, all right? Going to the times of Peleg when the earth was divided. But anyway, let's continue. So it says, and unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of the one was Peleg, for in his day the earth divided. And his brother's name was Joktan. We're going to move forward. These are the sons of Shem and their families, after their tongues in their lands and their nations. These are the families of Noah, after their generations in their nations. And of these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. Now, this flood is also that flood of Atlantis that they talk about, okay? The flood of Noah, basically just talking about the flood of the antediluvian world, or the world prior to Noah and his 3 sons, all right? So let's just go over these points real quick because I kind of stumbled on something and I apologize for it. So the first thing we want to note is that Shem, which is one of the sons of Noah, he is the father of all the children of Eber. So you have Shem to Eber, and then Eber had a son named Peleg. And during his day, the earth was divided. So that earth being divided during that day, not only is that talking about the continent shifting, but it's also talking about some of these Shemitic Atlantean groups that were in modern day what we call the Americas or the West. When the earth was divided, some of the people started to move around and travel east. And a lot of the science, knowledge, and wisdom that they had with them, they took it with them to the east. So this is what that is talking about, all right? And mind you, this is long before the days of the Israelites. This is long before the days of the Israelites. So that term Hebrew or Eber is talking about the ancestor of the Israelites, all right? Which would be this group that we call in the Atlanteans, all right? So that's what we want to get in this point. I just wanted you to see that you can track from Shem to Eber to Peleg. And during the days of Peleg, this is when the earth was divided. And that's also when the days of the Atlanteans, all right? And when they started to spread out, all right? And a lot of them traveled east. Because what does it say after Noah's flood? when the earth, the dry land started to come through, it said that a lot of the people went and settled in modern day Mesopotamia, and they started to travel east. All right. So that means that if they were traveling east, that means they were probably west. All right. Because if you believe that narrative that, so-called Noah's Ark, what landed at what they say Mount Ararat and somewhere in Turkey. Once again, a lot of that is freemasonic narrative. You got to take a lot of that with a grain of salt and do your own investigation. All right. So before we move forward, Shem to Eber, Peleg, these are the Atlanteans. And later on, called the Mississippians, the Maya, the Aztec, the Olmec. That's who these people are. So during this ancient time, ancient America / Atlantis began to travel to the east. So this civilization is much older than that Sumerian, Babylonian, Egyptian, Israelite civilization that will come much later. So, that religion that Shem passed down to Abraham, that was created in the Americas. The concept of understanding that God is a spirit, and God is not in the form of an idol. And some of those original customs that later on Abraham passed to Isaac, and Isaac passed to Jacob, and Jacob passed to Israel. See, the Israelites and Jacob, they didn't create those customs. They came from Shem. And Shem was that, ancient primordial forefather of the Americas. And that's where that custom comes from. So even when you see a lot of the indigenous Americans, like when you find the different Hebrew tablets and stones here in the Americas, and you find different, it seems like Islamic representation in the Americas that the tribal people were dealing with, it goes back to the ancient Shemitic days, like the ancient Adam days. Like they didn't learn that from some people who were coming from the East. They didn't know it. They created that here. And the people went in the East and created their own version of it. But nevertheless, it started here. Just like the pyramid culture and the indigenous American culture, it doesn't look like how it looks in Egypt. You can see remnants of the same thing, but when they took the knowledge, they created their own version of it. All right. But you just got to understand that the ancient Maya, the ancient Olmec, the ancient Mississippian, they taught the ancient Egyptian. They taught the ancient Babylonian. They taught the ancient Sumerian. They taught the ancient Mesopotamian. So we taught them. Okay. So the same way how, today we have modern day hip hop culture, and even though our people in our lower self, we still influence the worldwide culture. We always going to have the dominant culture, just like it was in the ancient world. Okay. So let's move forward. So understand that the wise men of Egypt, the wise men of Sumeria, they learned from the ancient Atlantean. Okay. They learned from the ancient Atlantean. The next thing I want to talk about is, as I briefly said, the different mound cultures and the mound building system and civilization that was here in, southeastern mainland North America, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Georgia, Alabama. Just go and research these areas on up into what they call the Midwest, because notice the word I'm using to describe our ethnicity. I'm using Mississippian, like the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River is one of the largest, if not one of the top 3 largest river systems in the world. Okay. So understand that the ancient river that, like how they make you think the Nile River is the ancient river. No, it's the ancient Mississippian River. So if you from mainland North America and you are a so-called black person, and you can trace your lineage here back to at least your grandparents, your great-grandparents, even me, I can go back a little further than that, then you descend from the ancient Mississippians. Yeah, your ethnicity, you come from one of the various Mississippian tribes that were in the whole eastern part of what we call mainland North America. And even the people that are in the western part of mainland North America, like California, Oregon, etc. That California culture that we know of as Mexican culture or Latin culture, that is the Maya culture. Okay, the Maya culture are the ancestors to the Mississippian. All right, so the Mississippian culture comes from the Maya. So California in the west is more of like the Maya culture. In the east is called Mississippian. So let me say that one more time so we'll get it. The ancient ancestor is the Atlantean. The descendant at the Atlantean would be the Maya. The descendant after the Maya would be the Mississippian. But all three of these are the exact same culture and civilization. So it will be like your grandfather, your father, and then you. Y'all all from the same bloodline. During your grandfather day, you know, he wore, let's say, his haircut a certain style. You know, in your father day, he may have wore, let's say, the Jerry curl. In your day, you know, you may have been wearing the locks. But nevertheless, y'all all are wearing some type of indigenous hairstyle that you can find our people wearing at some point in Earth history. Okay? Think about like how the retro Jordans be coming out. Like it's some of y'all that probably got children, especially if y'all are like maybe in y'all 40s and 50s, that y'all bought Jordans for y'all's children that probably first came out in the early 90s when y'all was in what, middle school or high school. So notice how like the generations, it's the same lineage. So remember, it's the Atlanteans, the Maya, the Mississippian. These are all the same people. But if you're from mainland North America, predominantly, I would say from like the Midwest, the South, the Northeast, the Eastern Seaboard, you descend from the Mississippian bloodline. And if you're from over in like that western part of Cali, and also too now, if you're from California, meaning like your ancestors didn't come during the Great Migration, meaning during the early 1900s, then yeah, you descend from that ancient Maya bloodline. But if you're from California, and let's say your grandparents came to California in the 30s or 40s, but they really from Georgia or Tennessee or Arkansas or something like that, you descend from the Mississippian bloodline. So we're not black people, we're ancient Mississippian, ancient Maya people. Let's move forward, all right? So the other day I was out, and you know, your boy Blackbeard, because I understand my culture, ancient Mississippian culture, ancient Maya culture, I know that a lot of what they call, you know, Latin America cuisine and food, this is our food, okay? And this is, you know, ancient food that we were eating here, ancient Mississippian, Maya, Aztec, Olmec food. So when I see El Salvadorian little restaurants, little mom and pop shops, if I see a little Honduran small business and they in there making sandwiches or something, you know, a Guatemalan or whatever, I'm gonna go to it, you know, check them out. I like a lot of the fruit drinks. You know, I like indigenous Maya food, right? So it was very interesting. I went to one the other day. Matter of fact, I'm about to drink some of the drink right now. I wish I could remember how to pronounce the drink. It began with a T. It's like this brown drink, it's sweet. But I got a bag for the restaurant when I left, and look what you see on the bag. You see the pyramid, the step pyramid that they got on the bag? So notice how the pyramid culture is throughout the Americas, and we understand that this is our stuff. Even small business, a small Guatemalan business, a small Honduras, or a small El Salvadorian business that may be in the hood of somewhere in California or something like that. Even they understand the remnant of the culture. Because when I go in there, the people, you know, they're smiling to see me. They're welcoming to see me. Now, you know, your boy Blackberry got to get on his indigenous American Latin and learn the language better. But nevertheless, the people are very welcoming because when they see me, they see, oh, that's an ancient Maya right there. That's one of the ancient Mississippians. He one of the original ones. And, you know, and I'm smiling when I see them because I know y'all part of the indigenous family too. So I just wanted you all to see this step pyramid and how pervasive our culture is, and just, you know, this is your pyramid. So if you're from America, you know, you should fall in love with the step pyramid. You should fall in love with the mound. That's why the United States of America put on the back of their dollar that pyramid. Now they did put the East African Hamitic, you know, Egyptian pyramid on there, but that was just the Masons to fool you. Because it's really supposed to be a step American pyramid. Because the true thing is this. The United States of America is supposed to be made up of two types of citizens. United States citizens, which are foreigners and descendants of foreigners of all skin tones, and American descendants, who are descendants of the ancient Mississippian and the various tribes that are in mainland North America. Those are your two type of American citizen. You have United States citizens, which are descendants of foreigners, and you have American citizens, which are descendants of the Mississippians, the Maya that were in mainland North America, and the other various indigenous tribes, the Algonquin that were here in mainland North America. All right. Here go another one. Here go an El Salvadorian restaurant. Let's see what it says. La Pyramid Salvadorian restaurant. All right. And usually in the Latin Moorish language, just like when you read the Quran and the Hebrew and the Torah, it's from right to left. So you know how here in North America, when we speak English, we write from left to right. Just remember that in your Latin, indigenous Mississippian Maya languages, it's from right to left. Okay. Another thing I want to say is this. We got to get away from using that term of calling the Latin language Spanish. It's not Spanish. Let me say that again. We got to get away from calling the Latin languages Spanish. So that means all the brothers and sisters that live in Guatemala, Honduras, Colombia, Dominican Republic, all the various Central America, Yucatan, South America countries that speak what we know of as the Latin languages. We don't need to call that Spanish, because the indigenous American Maya Olmec culture has nothing to do with the Roman Catholic, Visigothic, Christian culture, Crusader culture of modern day Spain. Okay. So we want to distinguish and separate ourselves from that. And those of us that are illuminated, just like this pyramid, once again, the pyramid is illuminated because the indigenous Olmec, Mississippian, Atlantean knew that the Most High sees all and is above all. And they will correlate that same understanding to the human brain and the human mind being illuminated when you come across a certain knowledge and understanding and wisdom. So us being the indigenous Americans, the ones that created the religion, a lot of these Latin cousins that we have that are here that aren't racist, and they may be cool and they want to learn from you. It's okay to teach them. You can teach them, because even myself personally, on my travels, through Arizona, which is another indigenous American land, I remember getting tattooed by one of the indigenous Mexican brothers, and me and him just had a long conversation during the tattoo about this history, and he was shocked and he wanted to learn. So, and he was one of these Mexicans that you see with all the tattoos on his head, and stuff like that. So some of them may be prejudiced, but not all of them, not all of them. I've met some that actually was decent and they like the history. And also a lot of them understand that the indigenous original Maya, Guatemalan, El Salvadorian, etc., they know that they were melanated people. So they're not going to look at you funny when you start talking about that. But yeah, here go another restaurant though. So I just want you to see that. So y'all show love to the Latin restaurants in your area if you like that type of stuff. And don't be surprised if you go in there and you see dark-skinned, copper-colored people that speak Latin working there too, because those actually are part of the family. All right. So once again, you see the pyramid on it though. You see the pyramid. All right. So, this is why the so-called Black Americans had the most influential culture, as I said. Even though we're in our lowest state, we are the blood ethnic national descendants of the Atlanteans, the Mississippians, the Mayans, the wise men and women of old. We created and built the United States of America in our lower servile state, but this is our country. There will be no United States of America without us, because we are the only real organic genetic Americans / Mississippians. Okay. So understand, like, you see this brother right here, how he's wearing the red, white, and blue. I don't know where the brother's from, but if he from mainland North America, he's an ancient Mississippian, Atlantean, Maya descent. But, this is our country. This is our land, and our continent. You should have pride in that, so don't run away from the red, white, and blue, because these are your indigenous colors. It's a lot of photographs and old paintings I've seen of, you know, kings and queens of Florida and the Carolinas actually wearing red, white, and blue feathers, red, white, and blue parrot feathers and stuff like that. All right. So that's why the United States of America uses it. And that's also why ancient Egypt used it, because they got it from us. That's why most countries, you know, in Europe use red, white, and blue in some type of a combination. Also, the red and green. So you think about how Mexico uses red and green. They got these royal imperial colors from us. So the red and green, the red, white, and blue, these are just various combinations we'll use. Because you see a lot of red and green combination throughout our civilizations of the Americas. So remember, you know, human beings are described by their ethnicity and nationality. So if you're from mainland North America, you come from one of these Shemitic Mississippian ethnic groups. So really, like, I wouldn't even call us a Black American. You know, I would call us a Mississippian American. That's the terminology I would use to call us, a Mississippian American, because Mississippian is going to help you understand the ethnicity. It's going to help you understand the land we were at, the civilization, the tribes, the cultures, and you could do deeper research. And you're going to, of course, find out that they were a Shemitic Negroid people. And, you know, most of you all's people are still there to this day. OK, so that word Mississippian is very appropriate for so-called Black people that are from mainland North America. And if you're from here, your parents from here, your grandparents, your great grandparents, you're more than likely an ancient Mississippian descent. OK, so, you know, that term Black American, it just can be confusing, you know, because it doesn't denote culture and ethnicity. All right. So, yes, the Mississippians are the Aboriginal people, the melanated people, or the indigenous people, the real organic Americans. Yes, they are. And this is why so-called Black American culture is very influential, even while we're in our bizarro lower self. OK, so hopefully you all learned something from this tape. Stay tuned. I'm out.